Welcome to AI ConvoCast, where we bring you the latest in AI and tech innovation. Quick housekeeping. Check out the affiliate links in our description. Using them supports the show, and please don't forget to rate, review, and share if you like what you hear. Let's jump right in.
Okay, so you know how everyone's talking about AI and jobs, right? Like, what's going to happen?
Yeah, it's a pretty big deal.
It is. So we're going to do a deep dive on that today. We've got reports and research from all these places: IMF, Pew, McKinsey, Chicago Booth Review, Brookings, even Harvard Law chimed in.
Oh, wow.
We've got some real world stuff from IT people on Reddit.
Always insightful.
Totally. Plus, takes from McKinsey, Global Institute, Fast Company, Supply Chain Brain, and a bunch from Tech Target.
Sounds like we've got all our bases covered.
I think so. What we want to do is, cut through all the hype, figure out what these changes actually mean, for our careers, for the economy, the whole thing.
Right, because there's definitely a lot of hype.
Totally. So the first thing that really struck me was everybody agrees AI is going to have a huge impact.
Yeah, it's not a question of if at this point. It's more like how much and how fast.
Right. So the IMF, for example, they're saying 60% of jobs in these advanced economies could be, quote, impacted by AI.
Impacted. That's pretty broad.
It is, but they do get more specific. About half of those jobs, they say, could actually benefit.
Oh, interesting.
Maybe people will get new tools, be more efficient, but the other half, they're the ones who might see their wages go down or even lose their jobs entirely.
So it's a real mixed bag, even just within that 60%.
Totally. And then Pew, they took a different approach. They looked specifically at jobs that are really heavy on tasks that could be fully automated, like right now with current AI.
So jobs that are basically ripe for a robot takeover.
Kind of, yeah. And they found that about 19% of workers are in those jobs.
So not as big as the IMF's 60%, but still a pretty sizable chunk of the workforce.
Oh, absolutely. Now, McKinsey, they come in with a slightly different angle. They're saying, okay, with the AI we have today, less than 5% of entire occupations can be totally automated away.
Okay, so less than 5% completely gone. That's not so bad.
Yeah, you might think that, but here's the catch. They also say that a whopping 60% of jobs have at least 30% of their tasks that could be automated.
So even if your whole job isn't going poof, a good chunk of what you do every day could be done by a machine.
Exactly. And think about it, even that partial automation, that can put downward pressure on wages. Companies might need fewer people if the work's getting done faster, more efficiently.
Right, because from their perspective, they're saving money.
Yeah, so even if robots aren't stealing our jobs outright, they could still be impacting our paychecks. It's something to think about.
For sure.
Now, of course, all this talk about automation, it makes people nervous. Like, are robots going to take over everything?
Understandably. It's like a sci-fi movie come to life.
Right. And PwC, they found that 30% of workers are actually afraid their jobs will be replaced by technology in general. So not just AI, but anything tech-related. That's a lot of people who are worried.
Yeah, that's a significant number. And it's not just some vague, abstract fear either.
Right. Remember what Fran Dresser said during that SAG-AFTRA strike?
Oh, yeah, about everyone being at risk of being replaced by machines.
Yeah, she really hit a nerve there, especially for people in creative fields like actors, writers, musicians.
It definitely makes you think, okay, if machines can create art, what does that mean for us humans?
Right. Big questions.
Big questions. And speaking of questions, I think the one that's probably on everyone's mind is, which jobs are actually most at risk here?
Yeah, good point. Let's get specific. Tech Target had a whole bunch to say about this. So one that always comes up is coding, right?
Oh yeah, coders are supposedly going to be the first ones out of a job.
Right. And it seems scary because AI can actually write pretty decent code now.
So it's not just like a far-off possibility anymore?
Nope, it's happening. But Tech Target makes an interesting point. They say it's the coders who are just focused on churning out basic code who are at risk. The ones who are really good at what they do, who can use AI as a tool, they're going to be even more valuable.
So it's not about being replaced by AI, it's about learning to use it to your advantage.
Exactly. And another big one that's going to be affected, customer service, like we've all talked to those chatbots.
Oh yeah. Sometimes it's hard to tell if you're talking to a person or not.
Right. And that's only going to get more sophisticated. But here's the thing. Completely automating customer service, especially for complex issues or things where you really need a human touch, that's still pretty difficult.
So there's still a need for human interaction, even in a world of AI.
Definitely. Then there's drivers, with self-driving cars and all that.
Yeah, that one feels like it's still a ways off, but the potential impact is huge.
It is. And Tech Target mentions that, there's still stuff to figure out, like regulations and whether people are even comfortable with self-driving cars. but the technology is moving fast. So if you're a driver, it's something to keep an eye on.
Makes sense. What else did TechTarget highlight?
Well, they mentioned the legal profession. AI is already being used for some of the more routine tasks, like reviewing documents, doing legal research.
So it's not replacing lawyers altogether, but it's changing how they work.
Yeah, and they might have more time to focus on strategy, talking to clients, the more human aspects of the job, the things AI isn't so good at.
Right. So again, it's about AI changing jobs, not necessarily eliminating them.
Exactly. Marketing, AI is all over marketing now. Personalized content, analyzing data, making those ads that seem to know exactly what you want.
Yeah, those targeted ads can be kind of creepy sometimes.
They can be. But it's also pretty impressive how they can tailor things so specifically.
It is, but it also raises some questions, right? Like about privacy and what happens to human creativity if algorithms are writing all the ads.
Good points. And then there's manufacturing. That's been getting automated for a long time. But with AI and robots getting more sophisticated, that's going to speed up.
So robots doing more of the physical work, the repetitive stuff.
Yep. And that means potentially fewer jobs for people on assembly lines.
Right, so it's not just white-collar jobs that are affected.
Exactly. Now, with education, things are a little more mixed. Some teachers are worried about losing their jobs. Others see AI as a tool, kind of like how calculators changed how we teach math.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. It's all about how we integrate these new tools into the classroom and whether they help or hinder teachers in their role.
Right. And even things like travel and tourism, booking your trip online, AI is doing a lot of that behind the scenes.
Makes sense. It can handle all the data, find you the best deals.
And HR, AI is being used to sift through job applications, even review resumes.
So it's streamlining some of those initial steps in the hiring process.
Yep. And then, of course, there's retail. Self-checkouts everywhere now.
Yeah, you hardly ever see a cashier anymore.
Right. So that's another area where AI is having a direct impact on jobs.
Definitely. Now, Brookings, they had a really good overview of all this. They pointed to a bunch of occupations that are potentially most at risk based on the latest data, like medical transcriptionists, customer service reps, credit analysts.
Makes sense. Those are all jobs with tasks that could be automated.
Yeah, and they highlighted some other research that showed AI could save a lot of time in areas like banking and finance, admin roles, and sales.
So it's not just about a few jobs here and there. It's about whole sectors potentially getting reshaped.
Right, it's a pretty big shift. But it's not all doom and gloom, right? There are new opportunities emerging, too.
That's the other side of the coin. As AI gets more integrated into everything, we're going to need people who can work with it, manage it, even develop it further.
Like AI trainers, for example. Or those technicians who keep everything running smoothly.
Right, and people who can think about the ethical side of things, make sure AI is being used responsibly. These are all jobs that are growing rapidly.
So it's not just about jobs disappearing, it's about jobs changing and new ones being created.
Exactly. And Brookings, they were really big on this point. The nature of work is changing. More of us are going to be working directly with machines, managing them, overseeing their output.
Sounds like we're all going to need to become a bit more tech savvy.
I think so. And it's not just about technical skills either. Both Brookings and McKinsey Global Institute, they both said the same thing. We're going to need a mix of digital and cognitive skills.
So the ability to think critically, to be creative, to solve problems, those human skills are still going to be important.
Super important, like being able to communicate well, to work effectively with others. AI can't do that, at least not yet.
Right, that human element is still essential.
Totally. Now, there was this one source, I think it was called Pasted Text, that listed out some of those new jobs specifically, like AI trainers, data scientists, AI ethics professionals. And they said LinkedIn is reporting a huge jump in demand for AI-related skills.
So that's where the jobs are going to be.
It seems like it, yeah. And the skills they're looking for, they're a mix of, the technical stuff, like understanding AI, working with big data, cybersecurity, and then those human skills we were just talking about.
So a well-rounded skill set.
Definitely. Now, all this means that a lot of people are going to need to upskill or retrain. Like, a lot of people.
Yeah, it's not just about new graduates coming into the workforce. It's about everyone who's already working, too.
Totally. SEO.ai, they threw out a crazy number. They're saying 120 million workers worldwide will need some kind of retraining in the next 3 years because of AI.
120 million. That's a lot of people.
It is, but here's the problem. PwC found that 39% of workers are worried they won't get the training they need.
So there's this big need for retraining, but people are concerned they won't have access to it.
Right. And the Chicago Booth Review talked about how a lot of economists favor investing in upskilling programs over things like universal basic income. They pointed to some success stories with sector-based training.
So training that's specifically tailored to the needs of certain industries?
Yeah, like manufacturing, healthcare, IT, and they even talked about this program in Denmark where they retrained workers who had been injured, helping them move into more cognitive-focused roles.
So showing that it's possible to make these kinds of career transitions.
Right, even after facing a setback like an injury.
And Pasted Text mentioned that 85% of companies are planning to make employer-led training a priority. Plus, there's all those online learning platforms like Coursera and programs from companies like IBM. Even governments are getting involved, like the UK has this AI upskilling fund.
So there's stuff happening, but it sounds like we need to do even more.
I think so, especially because the World Economic Forum is saying that by 2030, 59% of all workers will need some kind of upskilling.
59%, that's more than half the workforce.
Yeah, that really puts the scale of this into perspective.
It does, and there's another big concern here. The potential for AI to widen existing inequalities.
Right, like who benefits from all this and who gets left behind.
Exactly. McKinsey Global Institute said that AI could increase gaps between countries, between companies, and even between workers, those with the right skills and those without.
So the haves and have-nots situation could get even worse.
It could, but the Chicago Booth Review had some more optimistic points. They talked about how AI actually benefited lower-skilled workers at one software company, and they even mentioned research that showed ChatGPT, the AI chatbot, well, it actually reduced inequality in writing tasks.
So maybe AI can help level the playing field in some ways.
Maybe. But they also cautioned that if AI starts replacing workers altogether instead of just helping them, that could make inequality worse.
So it depends on how it's implemented, how we manage this transition.
Right. And Brookings, they pointed out that less experienced workers might not be the ones who benefit most from this shift toward managing AI. And as AI gets better, the wages for people with the same skills might actually go down.
Because companies might not need to pay as much for those skills anymore.
Exactly. And that could shift even more economic power from workers to the owners of capital, the companies.
Yeah, that's a worrying trend.
It is. So this is where we need to talk about worker protection. Like, how do we make sure this transition is fair?
Right, because it's clear that AI is going to have a big impact. It's just a matter of how we manage it.
Totally. Harvard Law had a bunch of interesting ideas about this. They said we need things like AI impact monitors in workplaces to track how AI is affecting things, and sectoral commissions to come up with safety and ethical guidelines for different industries.
So basically making sure AI is being used responsibly.
Right. They also said we need to make sure humans are still making the big decisions, especially when those decisions could impact someone's job or opportunities. And we need to protect workers' rights to bargain collectively. As things change, they need to have a voice in how it all happens.
Definitely. And Supply Chain Brain talked about the U.S. administration's stance on this. They're all about helping workers adapt, supporting them through career transitions, and making sure worker data is being used ethically.
So there's some awareness of these issues at the policy level, which is good.
Yeah, it seems like people are starting to take this seriously.
And Pasted Text brought up another important point, algorithmic bias. Like, if the algorithms that AI uses are biased, that can lead to discrimination.
Right, and that's something we definitely need to watch out for.
Absolutely. And they said we need policies that focus on equitable access to training so everyone has a chance to benefit from AI, not just a select few.
Yeah, level the playing field.
Exactly. Now, it's interesting to see how different countries are approaching this whole AI thing.
Oh yeah, like, is everyone on the same page?
Not exactly. So the Chicago Booth Review talked about the EU's AI Act. They're really focused on mitigating risks and protecting workers.
So they're being cautious.
Yeah, you could say that. And in the U.S., there isn't one big federal approach yet. It's more like a patchwork of state and city level stuff. But President Biden did issue an executive order on AI recently.
So they're starting to pay attention.
Yeah, but it seems like the U.S. and China are still mostly focused on innovation, on developing the technology, whereas the EU is more about regulation.
So different priorities.
Definitely. And that's going to shape how AI impacts the world of work in different places.
Yeah, makes sense. Now, what about the really long-term outlook? Like, what happens in 25, 50, 100 years?
That's where things get really interesting and maybe a little scary.
Oh, how so?
Well, Brookings talked about how more and more AI experts think we're eventually going to have human-level AI, and that could mean a lot less demand for human labor in general. There was this survey where they estimated a 10% chance that all jobs could be automated by 2037.
Wow, all jobs.
Yeah, and a 50% chance within the next century.
So we might be talking about a completely different world of work.
We might be, and pasted text even hinted at the idea that our whole concept of jobs might change.
That's pretty mind-blowing.
It is.
Okay, so big picture, AI is here, it's changing things, and we need to be ready.
Absolutely. And I think the key takeaways are we need to learn new skills, be adaptable, and really think about the ethical implications of all this. We need to figure out how to leverage AI's power without leaving anyone behind.
It's a balancing act for sure.
It is. So for everyone listening, here's a question to think about. How can you contribute to making sure this AI revolution benefits everyone? Whether you're thinking about your own career, your company, or even just as a citizen. It's something we all need to be thinking about.
Yeah, it's not just about the technology. It's about how we use it to shape the future you want.
Exactly. So let's all get thinking.
Let's do it.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to AI Convo Cast. Please don't forget to rate, review, and share if you like what you hear. Thanks and hope to see you again next time.